Thanks everyone for tuning in Friday Night Live. As I've said already, unfortunately Bill has gone to his brother-in-law's 60th birthday party this weekend, so he's up there for an extra long weekend. Trent sent me a message at like 8 o'clock this morning and said that he was sick and that he wouldn't be in today, so he's obviously enjoying an extra long weekend as well. Which I don't mind. He's a hard worker. I just prefer him not to lie to me. Fucking lying prick he is. So,
I mean, he's probably watching right now.
Yeah, he probably is.
We're trying to get your microphone, guys. Can you all hear us?
He's gonna watch it eventually anyway.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think he should feel really guilty for calling in sick this morning when there's clearly nothing wrong with him. He was fine yesterday, so. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us, guys, because we're running a new microphone. Yeah?
Yeah, I've had a few thumbs up, so I think that means it's working.
Has Ross done the thing? Are we going to get the printer?
I think he's done some printing.
He's already done the printing?
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's done.
Doesn't mean it was done right, just means it was done.
So no old shit with Bill tonight, unfortunately. He would have just made something up on the fly anyway. But yeah, so supposedly over in Victoria this year they're not doing Anzac Day. Has that been that's on the news or something like that?
Last thing I saw on Facebook,
They were going to cancel.
No, one of the councils went, fuck them, we'll do it.
Yeah, right.
So,
do it anyway.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it would have gone down very well.
No.
Cancelling the celebrations.
Because Bill pointed it out to me yesterday or the day before. He's like, oh yeah, they'll run the tennis open over there, but they won't do Anzac Day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how much money does fucking Anzac Day make the local councils? None. Of course they're going to do the, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but of course they're going to run a tennis open that brings in lots of money, but not want to do Anzac Day because they want to keep their numbers down.
I see the stink they kicked up when they had to be kicked out at 11:30, right before lockdown, for the Australian Open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had to, because lockdown was going to come into effect at midnight, sort of 11:30 p.m. or something. Everyone was really unhappy about it.
Yeah, right.
Socially distancing very well when they were walking out in protest.
But yeah, I mean, Anzac Day is because we're talking about old shit. It's just a bit topical. So, but otherwise, you guys would have seen the photographs of Trent's rifle, which is that one there, which is in 7mm Punchy. Now, some guys talk about like Trent from Punch Bowl or some shit. Is that what it is? Is that why he gets called Punchy?
No.
Oh.
Not Trent. Trent from Punch Bowl is a fucking meme. Like.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Trent reckons when he was younger he was called Punchy. And
just because he liked to have a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just so happened there's another cunt called Trent from Punch Bowl who's probably a meth head. It's fucking hilarious.
So it is or it isn't? Do we call Trent Punchy because he's a meth head or not? Or
I don't think Trent is a meth head
really
himself.
No, but that's
you would know. He's big fat.
That's the new meme
He's so
going
fair bit
around.
of it.
So really we shouldn't, but we're going to.
Yeah.
So
I mean, is it good teeth for a meth head?
Yeah, he's got a bit too many teeth. I don't know if they're his though.
he's got a broken nose, so
Yeah.
But let's have a close look. Let's have a close look at Punchy though. We couldn't get a bigger barrel in there, so that's.
Well, the stud on the front does touch the barrel, so I'm going to have to take that down. So, but that's a TSE 1-in-7 twist barrel because he's going to be shooting the 7mm 197 graders. So it's 1 inch at the muzzle, so it's a pretty heavy profile. I made a custom tactical muzzle brake for him because that's what he wanted, that's what he asked for. I didn't really want to make it, but I did. So, because I've made them in the past, like this one for the 6.5, and they don't really suit smaller, thinner barrels, but his big barrel actually looks quite good. So
there you go, Trent. Zaine likes your big barrel.
So I think I might profile down the nut on the back of that one.
You've been working on that one for years.
Yeah, it's because I just, yeah.
It's like
Anyway, it's in an ESS forend. It's an ESS chassis with the 18-inch forend. So it gives you an idea. That's a long barrel. It's a 30-inch barrel. He's got the pick rail on the top of the forend, just in case he wants to run a forward-mounted night vision.
vertical hand grip.
He'll probably never shoot it. Vertical hand grip, because he is going to be shooting it off a bench a lot, so it's a fair bit more comfortable with the standard ESS butt. It's just a Weatherby Vanguard action, so you can build some pretty strong, long-range rifles off Weatherby chassis, Weatherby actions, MDT chassis. So yeah, it's good little unit.
Yeah.
So it'll be good to see it go up against the big 6.5 that Ross did. So I'm waiting for that suppressor jacket to come in though to just finish yours off. You ordered one in black though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I ordered a tan one. I reckon the tan one will be better.
I don't give a fuck. That's if I run it.
You might just take it off here.
Yeah.
I don't think you've got a choice on this, Ross.
No, I don't have a choice.
We can make you like a little short skirt for it, so it's not so fucking.
Oh, we'll do it in tight and have like one end like a kilt.
That's when tassels hang off it, you reckon?
That's it. Yep. Or we could make the rear section that screws on the back of it look like an oil filter.
Yeah.
Like put the, like the star shape, like the little hand grip parts and the rounded fucking shape and everything.
Have like laser engraved like cat symbol on it or something like that.
So I've been machining alley all day, guys. That's what I'm flicking off my arms and stuff. Alley is shit. Like it's itchy to once you get it on you. It's like all the goo that I use to cool it out for cutting fluid and stuff. That dries and goes like crazy as well. But the alley sticks to you and I run it pretty hard in those little sharp.
Any specials on Bolt 308 ammo? We've got some 135 grain Sierras from OSA. They're 120 round bags and they're going for $310, mate.
It's not really a bargain.
Oh well, that's what we got on bulk ammo. And we've also got some, I think it's 130 grain in the 40 packs. They're $84.
That's actually a bit cheaper.
Yeah, that's pretty cheap for what that is.
Well, has Trent done any specials this week? Because the specials are running out at the end of the month.
Yeah.
So these specials are still on till the end of the month, but there'll be new specials coming out soon, probably next week.
If you want some 4570, we've got the 300 grain Federal JSPs for $58 at the moment.
They're normally $90.
So that's fucking cheap.
How many of them you got left?
5 packs left.
I mean, no one really
45,
shoots
70.
that.
223 is still on special. There's only like 6 packets of that left too. That's 23 a pack, normally 30 something. 34.
Yeah, we've got their like tanning kits and we've got the bore foam and we've got
all
the clay
the tanning kids are gone apparently.
No, we've got 4
No, we've
left.
got 4 there.
Oh, you still got 4 left? Okay.
When they came in,
Oh, I think they sold out and they ordered more in.
they came in midway through the month. And we've still got that ACAR 410. It's a really nice little unit, that.
I think them 2 ACAR 14.
Yeah.
So,
They're worth $1,400 and they're now $1,000.
$1,000.
Mm.
Good little snake gun.
I reckon it'd be great for lorikeets, to be honest.
So,
Flying pairs.
let's chuck that back. Alright, so I'm just going to have a quick yarn is about projectile stability. I think as I've been asked several times this week already about your admin.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
Alright, well,
I'm going to go pick up my kids.
you're working tomorrow?
Yep.
Yeah, me and you're working tomorrow.
Sweet as.
Oh, catch you later, Ross.
Cheers. So I've been asked about projectile stability. So some people were asking about 222s, some guys are asking about 308s and all that sort of stuff. And there's a very easy way to work it out. So if you do have the Applied Ballistics app and you put all your data in, you can generate a solution at the end and it'll give you your stability factor. So what happens is when you've got a projectile, where all the weight is in a normal projectile is in the arse, yeah? Because they're fat on the arse and then they taper on the front. Because all the weight's in the arse, it wants to go forward. To prevent that from happening, we spin projectiles. We give it gyroscopic stability. So we spin it. Now, the more it wants to go arse first, depends on how much extra weight's in the arse, you know what I'm saying? The heavier it is in the arse compared to the front, the more it wants to tumble, so the faster you have to spin it. And that's, so what we've got is we've got the centre of mass of the proji, which is towards the back, and then we've got the geometric centre of the projectile, which is just halfway along the projectile. So the further away the centre of mass is from that geometric centre, the more likely the bullets want to tumble. So the faster we have to spin it to keep them stable. Now, there's a stability factor that you'll get, which is a number, and that number will tell you whether the projectile is likely to be stable or not. And there is a lot of information that goes into it. Now, you don't have to get it all exactly right, but just be aware that there is like things like temperature and barometric pressure and whatnot that goes into the equation to determine whether the bullet's going to tumble or not. Now, you can get most of the data just on your bullet length and whatnot, design and weight, and the speed of how fast it goes, and the twist rate in the barrel. But just be aware that if you do generate your data at low barometric pressure, so if you're up a hill, like if you're at Crook Brook or something like that, it might be stable there, but it may not be stable at sea level. So, because at sea level the barometric pressure is heavier, so the air's harder to push through, and so the bullets become unstable sooner.
Is it really something that us West Australians would see much of a difference though? Like,
yeah, absolutely. So,
okay. So, I mean, you'd expect to see it in like New Zealand and that in the mountains, but I wouldn't have thought that.
No, you still see it here. So barometric pressure has a big influence on it. Out of all the atmospheric variables, barometric pressure has the most influence on it. And to give you an example, Lepore make a 185 grain projectile because most 308s out of Europe have always had 1 in 11 twist barrels, whereas most 308s out of America have 1 in 12 twist barrels, so a slightly slower twist. They all suited to 175 grain projectiles. The projectiles coming out of, like the guns out of Europe, were better suited to 185 grain projectiles, even 190 grain projectiles. Now, if you have like most of the 308s that come out of America now have got 1 in 10 twist barrels. But if you had a 308 with a 1 in 12, like a Remington or something like that, the 1 in 12 twist barrels would shoot the 185 grain projectiles if you were up the hill, if you're inland a bit, but it wouldn't shoot them at Swanbourne. They'd tumble at Swanbourne. And that's how dramatic a difference, you know. But in most situations, your bullet's not going to be on that cusp, you know what I'm saying? And you don't want it to be, you do want it to be a little bit safe. So if your stability factor is 1.5 or more, then your bullet will be stable. So you should really be aiming for about 1.7 though. If you get 1.7, then if there's a change in the variables, it shouldn't change whether your bullet's stable or not. So, and you can generate that data through the Applied Ballistics app, so I highly recommend downloading it. I do say that a lot because it is a very versatile app. So if your bullet becomes unstable though, what are you going to see? Well, what happens is the bullets don't just immediately tumble. What actually happens is instead of spinning on their axis, they actually yaw slightly. So they travel like that through the air, very slightly. So you get this wobble of the projectile. The tip doesn't follow the spin of the bullet. The tip actually wanders out a little bit, yeah? And you'll lose accuracy as a result. You'll actually lose quite a few things. So if the bullet starts to wander a little bit, so as you come down to a stability factor of say 1.2, the bullet will, if it's out of tune especially, the bullet will wobble a little bit. What that happens is that instead of having a caliber, say a 308 bullet, instead of having a 308 caliber bullet, because it's wobbling, you've effectively got a larger projectile. You've got a larger bullet face to go through the air, which means you get more wind drift, which effectively means the ballistic coefficient of that projectile drops. Now, I can't remember exactly how much it drops. I think it's something like 3% for every 0.1 below 1.5, something like that. But it does drop. So your bullet will become affected more by wind, and you'll lose your accuracy as a result. As you get down to 1 and less, your bullets can tumble in the air. So a lot of the guys that shoot bench rest actually shoot with stability factors around 0.1 or even just under 0.1. And they spend a lot of time developing their loads to try and get the tune of the barrel good, of the projectile good enough in certain conditions that the bullet will be stable. But that's There's not a lot of science to that. It's sort of like a suck it and see. And all the bench rest guys will actually record all their data on the day that they shot and the results that they get, and they'll go back and refer to that. And that's why those guys load on the day for the conditions that they're shooting in. So they'll actually load ammunition there on the bench, well, behind the bench, for the match that they're shooting that day, because everything has to be perfect. But for most people who don't know the conditions that they're going to be shooting at or loading ammo at home, you do want a stability factor a bit higher than that to make sure that you don't have problems when you go out in the field. So generally speaking, if you've got a 22 cal, so if you've got a 22 Hornet, you've got a 1 in 16 twist barrel, you really want to stick around 40, 45 grain projectiles. Now, I know I said that the length is what's important, and so a lot of bullet manufacturers will make 40, 45 grain projectiles the right length to stabilise in a 1 in 16 twist barrel. Whereas if you go to a 1 in 14, you really want like a 50 grainer. A 1 in 12 twist in a 224, you want a 55 grainer. And that's when you start getting into your faster twist rate barrel. So a 224, 1 in 10 twist barrel, you can shoot up to a 69 grain projectile and it'll be stable. 1 in 8 twist barrel, you can go up to an 80 grain projectile. 1 in 7 twist barrel, you can go up to a 90 grain projectile. And you can keep it stable, you can keep that stability factor up so the bullet doesn't tumble. And so you get the most out of the projectile. So you get the highest ballistic coefficient out of that projectile. So most 22.43s, when 243 first came out, they had a 1 in 10 twist barrel, I believe it was. And the 1 in 10 twist barrel would stabilise up to like a 90, 95. But a lot of hunting projectiles are 100 grain nowadays. Now they either don't have a boat tail or they're slightly unstable in a 1 in 10 twist barrel, and that's why Winchester and everyone who chambers 243 Winchester, they all make 1 in 9.5 or 1 in 9.25 twist rate barrels to stabilise the 100 grain hunting bullets. But what you'll find is that if you look at some of the match projectiles that are on the market, even a 90 grain match projectile is unstable in a 1 in 10 twist barrel. So if you look at the Lapua 90 grainer, you actually may not be able to shoot that in your 243, but you'll be able to shoot the Berger 90 grainer because even though it's the same weight, it's a shorter projectile and it'll be stable. And you can muck around with those figures in the Applied Ballistics app if you want and actually figure it out for yourself in your gun. So whereas Remington, when they came out with the 6mm Remington, they only had a 1 in 12 twist barrel because Remington, when the Super 6s were coming out in the 50s, I think it was, 60s, Winchester looked at it and said, this is going to be a versatile caliber for shooting deer and all sorts of stuff. And Remington said, no, it's a varmint caliber. People are only going to be shooting varmints with it. They're not going to want to shoot deer with it because people shoot them with 270s and that sort of stuff. And Winchester won because a lot of people bought the 6mm, the 243 Winchester, and then shot everything with it. So the versatility actually won out. Remington, the 6mm Remington died in the arse, and no one chambers it anymore. I don't even think Remington chambers it anymore. Remington doesn't chamber anything because it went broke. But so that's in your 6mm. 25 cal and 270 are the same. You're only really getting one twist rate. You get a 1 in 10 twist, and that'll shoot any of the projectiles that are on the market because they're not match calibers. People don't shoot competition with those sorts of calibers, and so there's not a big selection of projectiles, so there's not a big selection of barrel twists. 6.5 and 7mm though, on the other hand, big selection of barrel twists because there's a huge selection of projectiles for different types of competition shooting, for different cartridges, whereas 6.5 Creedmoor is better suited to like your 123 to 130 grain match projectiles. Your bigger case capacities can shoot 140s, and even now they've got 143, 147, 154 grain projectiles that you need special twist rates to shoot. But that's the other end of the thing. So you can get a twist rate for all of them. You can actually get a 6.5, 1 in 11 twist barrel if you want to shoot the little short 6.5 projects, and you want them to shoot really accurately at short distances. So same with 30 cal, you can go everything from a 1 in 17, 1 in 18 twist barrel all the way through to a 1 in 7 twist barrel for shooting 230 grain projectiles, 250s they've got now in a 30 cal. And then above that, again, your selections go down a little bit. Like a standard twist rate barrel in a 338 is 1 in 10. Some guys make a 1 in 9 just to stabilise some of the match builds. And then some guys even make a 1 in 7 twist barrel. The reason you do that is because even though most of the projectiles on the market will go through all your standard 338s and not have a stability problem, if your velocity drops, you start having stability problems, because as your velocity drops, it's not going forward as fast, so it's not spinning as fast, so it's not as stable. So if you're shooting 338s through like a small case, like a 338 Whisper, for example, then you need a fast twist barrel to keep your projectile stable. Yeah. So there are other things that come into it as far as your stability of the projectiles are concerned. So, but definitely run your ballistics through the app. If you're finding that you're having accuracy problems, if you go down to the target and the holes don't look right, maybe they look a little bit oblong, that's a sign that the projectiles are actually starting to destabilise and they're not going through the target perfectly straight. Again, if you look at the hole in the target, you'll see a hole in the middle, and then you'll see that would have pulled the target through, and there'll be like lines coming out from that central hole that show you where it's torn through the target. And where that area is, you might even see like a black sooty area, which is the carbon and the crap on the projectile. As it goes through the target, it deposits that on the target. Now, if you're only seeing that black sooty shit or the target tearing on one side, that might also be a sign that the projectile is slightly skewy as it's going through the target. And if that's the case, you might have a stability problem. Okay? Might also be the core of the projectile separating from the jacket that can cause that. So that's projectile stability. If you guys have any questions about the physics of projectile stability, please chuck me a question in the comments below. Now, I'm sorry that Trent's not here for me to call him a fat bastard.
Well, you're still calling him that.
I can call him that, but he's not here to sort of push back. It's not the same. So I'd really like it next week, if you guys have got some questions and stuff, if you've got anything for me and Trent to argue about, chuck it down in the comments, and we'll be back next week nice and fresh, and we'll have a Friday Night Live for you then. Is there any questions that I can answer?
There have been a couple of questions. Jake wants to know about what we've got in the way of 6.5 Creedmoor.
Ammunition?
Yeah, ammo on the shelf.
Ammo on the shelf, 6.5 Creedmoor.
Not seeing a whole lot.
No, I'm actually out of 6.5 Creedmoor. Yeah, I should have known. So 6.5 Creedmoor, Ross's new rifles in 6.5 Creedmoor, and I have to load ammo for that for the next shoot. But I did find a box out the back with a heap of 6.5 Creedmoor brass in it. Mm-hmm. So if I can find some powder, we might throw some rounds, just some reloads together for him, just so he can shoot his gun and run it in.
Yep.
But I might.
Well, we could actually go back to what we did last week. Talk about last week running it in. We could film him running it in. Maybe we'll do a very short.
It's boring.
It's boring, but we could do a very short thing on it.
I don't know. Yeah. Watch those little boring. People don't want to do it themselves. You don't want to watch other people do it.
Yeah. And Nathan wants to know about tunable muzzle brakes. Can we replicate something like the Eric Cortina tunable brake?
I have no idea what that is. Sorry, I'll have to get some pictures and have a look into it.
Yeah.
I don't know what advantages they're using. I mean, the idea behind a tunable brake is that you're changing the centre of mass and the length of the barrel to change the harmonics. That design, well, there's two there. There's two different designs there that do that. So by screwing the brake in and out, you're changing the centre of mass, you're changing the length of the barrel. I spoke to Tony over at TSE before doing the designs on these about how much adjustability I need, because obviously the longer the barrel, the longer the harmonic. Yeah, so if you've got a short, stiff barrel, the harmonics are the wavelength in the harmonics is very, very short and close together because it's stiff. And so you don't need much adjustability on the muzzle brakes to actually get from node to node. But as the barrels get longer and skinnier, you get more whip, the wavelength is longer, so you need to be able to move the muzzle brake a bigger distance to be able to adjust for that. So the tunable muzzle brakes that I do have a minimum 16 mil of movement on them. So they've actually got a bit more than that, but I tell people you don't really need to move it more than about 16 mil to get from your nodal points. So those brake designs do it really, really well. But if you are tuning barrels like that, some people be bold when you're making your changes, yeah? Like quite often you have to make a big difference to see a big difference. Like if you make a little change, it might not actually change the harmonic all that much. If you see any difference, it might be masked by, how steady is your rest. and you know how are you feeling on that day, or when you shot that particular group, you know what was the wind doing and stuff like that. You don't want these things to mask your actual change in the accuracy of the firearm itself. So shoot a couple of groups and make big changes. You know, do 2 or 3 turns and then shoot a group, and then shoot 2 or 3 turns and shoot another group, and really record the differences. Now you can come back and go between those nodal points and see if there's any difference, but that's how you want to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'll look up that muzzle brake that you mentioned and see what design features it's got, which is different to ours, and see if there's any. Well, I'll see first if there's any merit in copying it.
Now, Nathan Griffiths wants to know what kind of powder we're chasing for the 6.5 Creedmoor.
09.
Yeah, 09. I thought it was what we're using.
I think I've got some there.
Yeah,
I'll
I think
look next
I saw a tub lying around.
I think it's Nays. I think we just steal it. She's got Esperance for the weekend. So
Yeah.
It's not like she's going to do anything about it. She might kill us when she comes back.
Yeah, she probably will.
But we're hopefully going to have a delivery of powder in the next 2 weeks. So we can always just swap out with some fresh stuff for it.
Now it's not going to happen. And Ken Morton, if we're shooting 6.5 Creedmoor, 24 versus 26-inch barrel with the same powder charge, is there much noticeable difference in velocity?
Well, it depends. Like what projectile you're using, what powder you're using, what case you're using. There's a lot of variables in there. But generally speaking, if you're using the same powder charge, which is that you're using, a reasonable amount of pressure. We're not talking doing reduced loads and that sort of stuff. If you're using the powder capacity of the case and you're using a heavy projectile, then you'll see a bigger difference in the velocity than you would as if you're using a mediocre charge and a light projectile. There's a lot of variables, but generally speaking, yes, if you get a longer barrel, you will see an increase in velocity. Now, whether that equates to extra performance for you, well, that depends on what kind of shooting you're doing. Now, if you're not shooting further than 300 metres, it won't make any difference. None whatsoever. Only if you're shooting out the transonic zone or close to it. So you'd have to be shooting to 1,000 metres to really notice a difference. But there is a difference.
You're saying 140 grain ELDs and a 39 grains of 09 powder.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly on the load data for 6.5 Creedmoor, so I can't comment on it.
We need the app open in front of us.
Yeah. But yes, generally speaking, you'll see an increase in velocity. So bullets still increase, will keep speeding up in the barrel. And technically, they will keep speeding up till 15 calibers outside the barrel because gas is still expanding behind it. So they will still increase in velocity, 15 calibers, and then they slow down. So yeah, the longer the barrel, the better. Now, the other thing is you get a diminishing returns though. So if you go from 20 to 22 inches, you'll have a big increase in velocity. 22 to 24, you'll have a similar sort of increase in velocity. 24 to 26, not so much. 26 to 28, you get a little bit increase. 28 to 30, there's bugger all increase. Yeah, but again, it depends on the case as well. So, but yes, you would get an increase in velocity.
Do we have any 3F black powder?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think we
haven't
did.
got any black powder anymore. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
We stocked it for a while there, but we can't get it anymore. It's Transport's the issue.
Yeah. Righto.
Blame South Australia.
Got a Ticker 300 Win Mag. He
Yep.
wants a heavy match barrel. Wants to shoot 230 grain produce.
Yep. So you do a 1 in 7.
Yep.
Or
1 in
1 in 7.
1 in 7 barrel. Yeah.
Yep. So you want a 1 in 7. 300 Win Mag. Shooting 230 grains, you'll definitely get an advantage to a minimum 28-inch barrel. You want to go 28 as a minimum. You can go down 26, but you're losing velocity, which is defeating the purpose of going for an aftermarket barrel, and shooting those projectiles. So 28-inch to 30-inch barrel, 1 in 7 twist to get the stability factors out of it. Depending on what kind of gun you've got and what length magazine you've got, a custom chamber would actually suit you really well, because on a 300 Win Mag they have a short neck, so the neck is less than 1 caliber, which is short. Yeah, the general rule is you want 1 caliber of neck length.
It's probably why Trent likes the caliber so much.
Yeah, he hasn't got a neck at all. So you want, but the 300 Win Mag's got less than 1 caliber, and that was so they could get the shoulder further forward so they could get more powder in it. Now it is and it isn't an issue. If you're single loading the rounds, it's not an issue, yeah? Or and most modern magazines have got recoil stops on the shoulders inside the mags that prevent the rounds from smashing into the front of the magazine and pushing the produce back inside, because that's what you need. You need net length for net tension, so your projectiles don't get forced back inside. So, but if you've got the magazine length with the 230 grainers, there would be an advantage to actually reaming the throat of the chamber out to allow you to seek the produce out further. That gives you more case capacity, which means you can load more powder and get them going faster. It also means that the projectiles are better, they're better orientated in the barrel at the start, so they'll go down the barrel straighter, so they don't start skew, if you know what I'm saying. So there's advantages going to that.
Alrighty, and a Ticker 270. Matt tried to get talked out of that calibre at a different shop. Would we sell him one?
I'll sell you whatever you want.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a silly question, really.
Well, 270, it depends. Like, it may not be the best calibre, but if you want it, you want it. Like, it's like whiskey. You know, no one can tell you what you like. So everyone's got a different palate. Everyone likes different whiskies. Everyone likes different food and that sort of stuff. Now, you know, you're asking for a 270, and if you're shooting stuff like goat, you know, antelopes, like you know, deer and that sort of stuff. You know, stuff that's slightly heavier build, that comes from like Europe, stuff that's usually hunted by predators, then a 270 is a really good projectile, because it's a really good calibre, because it's really well designed to that slightly heavier game. But Australian game, the 270 is it's a bit too tough, yeah. So you know, if you're going shooting camels or something like that, and you're within a couple hundred metres of them, you do it. But probably not as well as a 30-06. It's just 270 is one of those colours that it fits a bit of a niche, and it doesn't have a lot of versatility to it. But if you've used one and you like it and you're confident, you know, if you buy a 270 and you're confident with it, you're going to shoot much better than someone that buys a calibre that maybe is a little bit better suited, but they're not confident with it. You know what I'm saying? So. But I wouldn't buy a 270 to go and shoot roos or anything like that. The projectiles are just way too hard. They go straight through. They run off. You have to shoot them 2 or 3 times to kill them. It's not very good.
Rightio. And Jake wants to know about the Desert Tech situation. He wants one.
You can't have one in WA.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the ballpark, isn't it?
So yeah, so the Desert Tech rifle was actually the rifle that was taken to the Supreme Court when the original challenge to 26B happened, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, yeah? So when this all first started with the 26B stuff, the gun that was taken to Supreme Court was the Desert Tech, and it lost. So if there is a gun, that's legal precedent saying that the Desert Tech rifle is prohibited in WA under that regulation. And until the police change, until the legislation is changed, or the regulation, sorry, it's in regulations. Until that regulation is changed, you can't have one. Regardless of what other people have been telling you, you cannot get one in WA. They will not license one in WA. You can't have one. So, now if you want to get into that topic about why Desert Tech was taken to the Supreme Court when there was a lot of other options available of more recreational types of guns, like the other gun at the time was the Savage 110BA. That gun, which is now legal, that should have been the gun that was taken to the Supreme Court, because we had a much better chance of winning that argument than the Desert Tech, which was a bullpup rifle. There's no other recreational rifle on the market anything like it. You know what I'm saying? And so the likelihood of it being like losing the Supreme Court was much, much higher. But the reason it went to the Supreme Court is because the owner of that Desert Tech had money to go to the Supreme Court. You know what I'm saying? So it's the people who own those sorts of guns who have got the money to go to the court. So it wouldn't have happened with a Savage anyway. You know what I'm saying? So I'm throwing both sides. I'm trying to throw both sides of the argument up here because Trent's not here. But you can appreciate that's what it was. So no, you can't. In fact, there's a chassis which is made to suit Remington, which you can turn your Remington 700 into a bullpup rifle, and that's prohibited too. So, so the bullpups are out. Can't have them. Not in the short term, anyway.
It might happen one day, but
They'd have to change regulation to do it.
yeah.
That's not up to that's not up to police.
Yeah.
That's up to the legislators. Yeah. So the people who make the legislation, it's up to them. The police commissioner, I think, could make a recommendation to the police minister to have it taken out of regulation, but it's not his responsibility. So, just like, so that's a regulation issue. Now that regulation is in, that it exists, the decisions that are being made subsequently in the years since, and this has been happening for 10 years more. The decisions that have been made on that since are policy, and that's by police. You know what I'm saying? So it's confusing where the issue lies. But the Desert Tech went to the Supreme Court and it was defeated on the legislation. The legislation is the issue of the legislatures of our elected members of Parliament. Other decisions on 26B are made on policy by police licensing, and those issues lie with police licensing, not with the Labor Party, not with the Liberal Party. Yeah? Because it wasn't that long ago the Liberals are in and the same decisions were being made. So,
yep. What's our opinion of 204? This is a bit of a
204
bold
Ruger
one.
is mint. Yeah, so 204 Ruger, if I remember correctly, came in about 2005. So it shoots a 5mm projectile, so 204 diameter projectile. The projectile weights are normally 32 to 40 grain. But here's the interesting thing. A 40 grain 204 projectile has got a higher sectional density than a 55 grain 224 projectile. So it's actually got more weight behind it. And because of that, because the 40 grain 20 cal projectiles are relatively heavy for their diameter, you need a faster twist rate barrel to shoot them. So you need a 1 in 10, which doesn't sound that much faster, but twist rate's actually relative to bullet diameter. Like we just say it as an inch, 1 in 10, 1 in 12, 1 in 14, 1 in 16, yeah? But it's actually relative. We should be, it gets too confusing, but we should actually be talking about twist rate relative to bullet diameter. So a 1 in 10 twist 308 barrel is relatively much faster twist rate than a 1 in 10 224 projectile barrel. I'm confused myself. 224 1 in 10 is nowhere near as fast as 308 1 in 10 because it's relative to bullet diameter. 204 1 in 10 is actually quite quick, and for its, that's just the standard twist rate. It doesn't get any slower than that. And 204, you actually go 1 in 9, 1 in 8 and stuff as well. 204 1 in 10. So the projectiles are going much faster than a 223. They're doing 3,800 feet per second. Yeah. They're spinning faster than a 224 projectile. They penetrate deeper than a 224 projectile because they've got a higher sectional density. Now, what does that mean? If you're shooting medium-sized game like foxes and kangaroos, you're going to hit the animal. The projectile is going to penetrate through skull and bone and cartilage and that sort of stuff and get into the vital areas, and then it's going to rupture and come to bits because it's spinning so fast. Because two things: it's going through a faster twist barrel, and it's going forward much faster, which means it's spinning much faster. The terminal performance of that projectile is catastrophic, and it absolutely destroys what it hits. And the proof of that was when I first built it. So 204 came out in America in about 2005, and people can look that up on Google and correct me if you want. But it wasn't available immediately in Australia. You couldn't get rifles, you couldn't get brass, you could get projectiles though, because 20 cal was something that was like invented in the 70s, just it never took off. So barrel manufacturers made barrels for it and that sort of stuff. So when it first came out, I built myself a 20 cal. So it wasn't a 204 Ruger, it was a 20 PPC, so, but very similar. And I shot 40 grain projectiles through it. I used the VMAXs and the ballistic tips, and I prefer the ballistic tips. And the first night I took it out, I was shooting with my mates that I normally go shooting with, and they were laughing at me. Yeah? They're like, oh, you're never going to kill anything with this. We went to Eniata, and we were shooting, when we started shooting, we were up on some high country, in some shitty bush that we had to meander through to get down the hill to get to where kangaroos and everything were. And as we're meandering through this rubbish, we've seen some kangaroos on our left that were in the shrubs. Yeah, and the guy that was in the front seat, I haven't seen him for years now, but he's a good friend of mine. And but he was a relatively a newish shooter. Yeah, he wasn't as experienced as the rest of us. And I always like to give other people the first shot of the night. Yeah, to sort of get one under their belt, because it really helps your confidence once you've got one or two. And so I gave Nathan the first shot. He was shooting his 308 Kimber Classic, beautiful rifle. And we were looking out to the left, and these roos were probably 150 metres away. And you could just see their heads above the shrub. And I was looking through the scope, and I remember I had one of my Leupold fixed 8-power scopes, which I've still got. I've great scopes. It's a shame they don't make them here. So Leupold fixed 8-power, and there's nothing to adjust on it, which is great. You just point the gun, you can't do anything. You just point it and pull the trigger. You can't play around, so you don't mess around. Anyway, I'm looking at this kangaroo, and I'm watching it, and it was just getting dark. And Nathan took the shot, and I saw the bullet just skim between its ears, just went through there. And because it's 150 metres away, obviously the bullet's just going a little bit high, because I think he had them zeroed at about 200, 220. It just went a little bit high, and I sat there for a sec, and the kangaroo didn't move. And in a split second, I decided, fuck Nathan, I'm going to take the shot. And so I put the crosshairs just on its nose and pulled the trigger. Now, I had a fair amount of confidence with this gun, because when I got it, I spent a little bit of time neck turning cases and all that sort of shit, because I had to form all my own cases. So I knew the gun shot reasonably well, and I knew where the point of aim was. And I put the crosshairs on its nose and pulled the trigger, and the other guys went, oh, in the car, because I hit this thing right in the middle of the head and just knocked it out like a light, yeah? And when I got up there, the bullet had penetrated through the cartilage just on one side of the nose, and had broken the eye socket out and blown the back of its skull out, yeah? And it was just a mess. So it was absolutely phenomenal. That night, the other guys were shooting all right, but they weren't shooting great, and I was on the money. So what I was doing was I was actually, rather than shooting, I normally shoot right-handed out the window. What I actually did instead, we normally got the window rest as well. What I actually did is I got up and sat on the window with the window rest behind my back, because that way I could shoot out the left-hand side, or I could shoot over the bottom of the unit. So I could shoot basically all but 360 degrees. And I shot 14 kangaroos with 15 shots that night. So one kangaroo I had to shoot a second time. I shot it and it went down, but I shot it again just to make sure that it was down. So 204 Ruger really outperforms what it was designed to do. It was designed as a varmint caliber, but it is really well suited, especially to WA, especially if you're shooting from like Geraldton South, you know, and you're shooting foxes and kangaroos and rabbits and that sort of stuff. So really good cartridge. Now the ammunition is hard to get and it's expensive, so do look at, if you are looking at like a good varmint caliber, you do want to make sure you reload for it. The other downside of 204 is that the report from it is a really sharp crack. So it's similar to 22-50 if you shot a 22-50 before. It is much louder than a 223, yeah, in the same barrel length. So it's got a really sharp crack to it when it goes off. Doesn't bother me because I wear earmuffs. But for people that don't wear earmuffs when they're out shooting, please wear some earmuffs, and don't buy a 204. So, but that's my idea behind the 204 Ruger. Well, any 20 cal in general. Nick's actually got a 20 tactical, which is 223 neck down to 20 cal. So you just form 223 brass just straight out of 20 cal. And so if you've got a good selection of, like, you've got a really good accumulation of 223 brass, or you can get some 223 brass for cheap, then get yourself a 20 tactical. I'll build you a 20 tactical, it's not a problem. Yeah. So the only other issue is that aftermarket barrel manufacturers do not make 20 cal barrels in chrome moly. It's only in blue, because chrome moly barrels are harder to button. Sorry, it's only in stainless. You can only get stainless 20 cal barrels because they're easier to button. You end up bending push rods trying to button rifle chrome moly barrels.
All right. Jesse wants to shoot camels and donkeys out past 300 metres. What calibre would you recommend?
Well, the problem is that the very powerful firearm policy is meant to restrict you from doing it. So what you're basically forced to do at the moment is to buy an inferior calibre to do what you want to do. Because if you want to do what you want to do, the police won't approve the correct rifle to do it, you know what I'm saying? They've effectively created a situation at the moment where there's huge animal welfare issues because of their ideology. Not based on any science or anything like that. They've just got this idea that if you want to do that it's, even though they're not governed by the Animal Welfare Act, and even though under the Animal Welfare Act, if you're culling feral animals, that is an excuse to not kill something with the first shot. Like, if someone accuses you of animal welfare violation, the fact that you're shooting feral animals is a defence. Anyway, they ignore that. They ignore the little bits and pieces that don't fit their ideology. And they use a government document which is designed to advise government employees using semi-automatic 308 rifles at 30 metres. They use that document to say that recreational shooters don't need anything bigger than a 308. But that aside, if you're shooting an animal like a camel, you need a big, relatively big, heavy projectile, yeah? So you need something like, you can use a 270 if you shoot them at short range, but if you shoot them at 300 metres or further, you need a 30 cal or a 338, yeah? And anything bigger than that, and like you can have a 375 Ruger, but the problem is past 300 metres, you're really running out of velocity. Those projectiles aren't designed to do that. So you really want something like a 300 PRC or a 338 Win Mag. Yeah, they're both really good calibers. They'll handle nice, big, heavy projectiles that are designed for shooting game. The 30 cal's probably got the edge because it's a little bit better in the wind. But generally speaking, they're two really good calibers to use. Another one would be 375 short range if you want to go for a Wildcat, which is a case that I designed. It doesn't meet the Very Powerful Rifles criteria, so it hasn't been banned, but it will let you shoot a 375 projectile at a speed about the same as a 375 Ruger, maybe a touch heavier, but you should get better performance out of that case for longer range shooting than you would with trying to stress the 375 Ruger case too much. So yeah, one of those.
28 Nosler, can we get it in WA?
No, it's on the VPR, Very Powerful Firearm list. So what it is, 300 Win Mag, shooting some factory ammo that I don't know what the police used, but I think it was a 150 grain. Generates a certain amount of energy, and at 300 metres it's still got a remaining energy of about 2,000 foot-pounds, I'm pretty sure it is. If a factory load for a calibre has more than 2,000 foot-pounds of remaining energy at 300 metres, it's prohibited. 7mm, so 28 Nosler is out because it just goes over. 7mm Ultra Mag, which is the 28 Nosler case but longer, so you can get more velocity, is not on the list because the factory loaded ammunition doesn't exceed 2,000 foot-pounds at 300 metres. So you can have 7mm Punchy, which is what that gun's in, which is the 375 or 300 PRC case nicked down to 7mm. You can't have 28 Nosler, you can have 7mm Rum, yeah? But they're the big hot ones. I think you could probably have 7mm STW, but you wouldn't. Because that's based on 375 H&H case, so it's got a belt, it's pain in the arse.
Right. Do we know anything about the 6.8 ammo, if Nye's getting any, like this 2776 Fury?
No, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, didn't think
There's
so.
another one with the steel base. It's like a steel base and then a copper case, so you can load it up to like 80,000 pieces.
Yeah, the composite case is that was built for military spec or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see any of that.
I'm not sure. I'm all for technology increases. Now, there's going to be other issues that come into play once you start playing with those sorts of pressures. But I know people are going to be asking for it. And because it's a new cartridge that's on the market, if people want it chambered, I can probably look at doing that. But there's other cartridges which are only built for ARs that have been around for a long time that I won't chamber, because it's a known fact that people have unlicensed guns that they shouldn't have, and to be able to buy ammo for them, they buy something or get something chambered that's on the market as a recreational gun, yeah? And so I don't want to end up in court defending myself about why I chambered your gun in 220 Russian. That's not one of the calibers, but there's other calibers out there that I won't chamber for that reason.
Yep.
But if you want the Sig Fury, that's fine. Like, it's a new caliber. No one's got an actual AR in that yet. It's an interesting caliber, and I'm happy to build a bolt-action rifle in it.
Yeah. Camel with 300 Win Mag. I mean, that'd be alright, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Camel 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
You want to use a nice, 190, 200 grain projectile, like an ELDX or something like that would be good. 212 grain ELDX. Yeah. Would be good. You're running out of steam a little bit as far as your velocity goes, so you need to place your shot really well. Because what happens as the bullets slow down, they actually deform less when they hit something. When they deform less, they penetrate further. You don't get as much temporary cavitation in the vital areas, and so they don't go down as hard. So you really need to make sure your shot is well on. On a camel, they're a vegetable eating bloody animal. They got lots of guts, and so you really want to, like, all their vital areas are up, under their armpits, between their armpits and their elbows. It's hard to describe without having a picture here. In the front third of their chest. Yeah, so you want to go for a heart lung shot there.
We should get some life-size cutouts and put them out at the farm, shouldn't we?
It's a fucking life-size cutout. It'll be the size of that fucking wall. Camels are a big fucking animal.
They'll be big, but
it's like an 800-pound bloody. It's like a moose.
Just bring a fridge box or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll get Trent dressed up in Trent can be the head and Ross can be the tail, and that can fucking run around.
Wear a horse costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think we've covered them all. Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got any more questions about ballistics or anything like that, chuck it down in the comments. I'll answer it next week.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching Friday Night Live. Sorry there was not more going on, but I hope you guys have a good long weekend.